Hey everybody, Jean-Luc and Jordan here.
Hello.
And we just got back from the Borderlands 3 gameplay reveal event. We're going to assume that you've already seen the presentation they did, maybe you've even seen some of our gameplay, so you know what's new in Borderlands 3, but we want to talk about how it actually felt to play Borderlands 3, and does it feel substantial, because it has been quite a while since they've made a new Borderlands.
I was say 4 years, I want to say, since pre-sequel, and Borderlands 2 came out in 2012, so it's been a really long time.
Right, and pre-sequel was like built off the structure of 2, which was even in turn sort of built off the structure of 1. This feels more substantially different. I feel like I thought the weapon handling overall felt like a little bit tighter, a little bit better. They seem like they've made a lot of improvements. So let's talk about a couple of those. There's sliding, and there is mantling now.
Yes, and you can definitely tell when I spoke to Sage, the game director, he cited Titanfall 2 as one of the inspirations for the new mechanics. And that makes a lot of sense because you don't go as fast as Titanfall 2, but the mantling and the sliding just makes the flow of combat move so much more quickly, and it feels a lot smoother and better to play this game than previous Borderlands games.
I definitely had to train my brain to use it because I've actually been like replaying Borderlands like 1 and 2, so I'm like, right, I can slide, right, I can mantle. I'm curious how much I'll actually end up using those, specifically the slide. The mantle I like because it adds more like verticality to the way they're designing these levels, which I think is pretty cool. We can touch on that a little bit later, but sliding is neat, but at the same time, I still found myself just like bunkering down and shooting people.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me. I would love for them to maybe tweak the sliding a little bit. Apex has spoiled me, and I want it where I can just infinitely slide around, right?
So, yeah, like, I kept trying to slide down slopes, and then eventually get to a point where I just stop. I'm like, oh, it doesn't keep going.
But I do think that is nice. It makes the combat feel faster, which is another thing. Like, everything feels faster paced than those previous Borderlands games. I feel like enemies are moving around, just like the combat just feels like it's faster overall.
And I'm not entirely sure if it is actually faster or if it's kind of like you said, how the fact that the sliding and mantling allows you to interact with the environment a little bit more. So enemies are ducking behind cover, they're climbing up on stuff, and you can now do the same. So you're moving a lot more in Borderlands 3 when you're fighting people. You're not just kind of like standing on one side of the battlefield with the enemies on the other side and just shooting at each other.
Right. That was like a classic Borderlands strategy, especially in 1, was like the enemies will charge at me, so I will hold back and shoot at them. And that was sort of like the way you did combat in that game. And it's gotten like more dynamic over time, but this feels like they're really stepping it up. And
like you are a vault hunter. You are hunting down the enemies that you're fighting.
Compared to the other games, I feel like they've improved it a lot, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Malawan pushed most of the Atlas forces back to HQ, but I've got a small team working behind enemy lines. I have to make sure they haven't been overrun with all these bandits running around.
Now, something that didn't feel as good as the driving portion of the game. Like, they've made improvements for it. The vehicles don't flip over as often, but they're still a little too weightless, in my opinion, and it's still not the easiest to get around when you're driving a vehicle.
The handling feels a bit better for sure, but I didn't think the combat was much improved. Like, it's still that weird thing where, especially when you're playing single player, the best way to use combat with the vehicles is to actually like park yourself and just shoot at them. Like, actually trying to do that like dynamic driving around doesn't really work. It's one of those things that it's not like a deal breaker or anything. I mean, it's just sort of like, okay, it's a little bit better, but it's not improved in enough that I as much as I'd want it to be.
Yeah, it's nothing to write home about, but Borderlands has never really been about driving. It's been more about
it's not
going to
really, I don't think it's going to negatively impact my Borderlands experience. And I do like some of the, like the cyclone thing they had.
Yeah, it's so
like,
cool.
That is pretty cool to drive around in. It's like a single one-person vehicle. You can't shoot for shit with it, though.
No, you cannot. But it's great to just get around. It has a very tight turn, and when you're driving in the new planet, the city planet, Promethea? Is that
Promethea.
Yeah. The cycle is perfect for getting around that city planet.
Right. I like that planet, and because it is like a lot of winding streets. It kind of reminds me of like a Halo 2 like New Mombasa sort of feel, which is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And I feel like there's a lot more packed into these levels. Sort of a thing with Borderlands 1 and 2 is that the levels were like really flat but really like large. And at least this particular area feels very different, where it feels like a lot of winding streets, a lot of like vertical like
Yeah, I had to keep pausing and looking at the map and like changing it to like see which level of the city I was on, because I'm like, I'm where the marker is. I'm like, oh no, I'm a level above the marker. I need to go down.
Yes, and they made improvements to the map, which is really nice, where it actually shows verticality, and also it paints where you've been before, which is really nice, because when I got to the end of the demo and I was like, all right, let me look around and see what I missed, I could easily see like, oh, I haven't been over there, and I could go back. So subtle changes like that. This map in particular, I really like it. It feels like a place I can explore and you know, find secrets in, which I was able to find at the end of my demo.
Yeah, and even better, it feels distinct from Pandora. I was so worried when they had announced that we were going to be visiting other planets that they were just going to essentially just be reskins of Pandora, but fighting on Promethea actually felt different. Like you said, there's a verticality of the environments, there's some long but narrow streets. Fighting on this planet felt different. Traversing this planet felt different than Pandora, and we have no idea what the other planets have in store, but this makes me hopeful that most of the new planets offer different gameplay experiences depending on where you travel to.
The other thing is the guns themselves, which is always a big part of Borderlands. The big new thing is the alt fire. Like, so you almost every gun you can switch it and it'll have an alternate fire mode. It's really weird when you find a gun that doesn't have one. It's like, oh, this is just a normal Borderlands gun.
I almost don't want it because
I don't want that, right? But I really like the alternate fires because I feel like they've used it to encourage maybe like some of the problems I had with Borderlands. So the big problem I've always had with Borderlands is the elemental stuff. I never found it. It's useful, but when you're trying to spec for it, I usually go for like just the higher damage.
Right.
And I happen to have one that has an elemental effect. And now with the alternate fires, it's more useful because there are all sorts of ways alternate fire can work. One of them is that the gun functions the same, but you actually switch which elemental type you're using. And so when I had a gun like that, I actually found myself being more strategic and like using those elements like, oh, I can switch to the shock one and use it on that guy's shield, and then I can switch to a different one. So that actually like felt better.
Yeah, it essentially doubles your arsenal because you could have 4 guns that have alternate firing rates, and this essentially then have 8. And I think it's going to really help in the beginning when you probably can only have one gun. Finding one that has an alt fire rate will essentially allow you to start with 2.
So like stuff like that makes the guns feel more viable. I was mixed on some of the guns. I ended up like, there are some that I really liked and some I didn't like. I kept finding a lot of like shotguns you had to charge, and maybe that's just my personal preference, but I don't like it takes like 3 seconds to charge the shot, and then you shoot it, and then the amount of damage it did was like not.
I found one that was really good, but like I had found like 6 that were just garbage before then of like charging shotguns.
Yeah, like it's just like it's not doing enough damage. I'd rather just get a shotgun I can fire normally, and like that feels better. But there were definitely a lot of guns that felt really good. I really liked the Jacobs guns, like they like fire as fast as you can. There was one that you like hand crank. They've really gone above and beyond in like making each gun like feel unique in its animations. You know, like there's the one that you pull with like a motor, and then you can like pour water on it, or you know, use a squirt gun to like reduce it.
Looting a gun feels a lot more like a deliberate choice. Like I'm putting together my ideal loadout that fits the playstyle that I'm doing with a Vault Hunter, as opposed to just picking up, like you said earlier, the strongest gun available to me. I'm trying to actually find. It's like, oh, this has a really nice alt fire, and it kind of, I think, ties into the fact that now with Vault Hunters having 3 different action skills, there's more choice in how you build the type of Vault Hunter that you want to play in Borderlands 3.
Yeah, I really like all the alternate skills, having tried both characters. Like, Amaya, her thing is like, okay, well, you have this one ability that's basically just Maya's ability from Borderlands 2, but then you also have this one where you're like shooting out this like projected image of herself, which I found very useful if I wanted to play more long range. You have this like one that's like a ground slam if you want to be more up close. So unfortunately, because we didn't have all the skills, we didn't get to like see the full breadth of like the skill tree.
Yeah, there were some at the bottom. I'm like, oh, that sounds so cool, but there's no way I'm gonna earn enough experience to get there.
But like in execution, we don't know how those work. But at least the basic skills they're starting with, you can tell that they're putting a lot more effort into making each character feel more unique or like more customizable with that stuff.
Yeah, before it felt like each kind of Vault Hunter kind of fell into their own like distinct role. Like you could play Maya however way you wanted to, but the fact of the matter is she was a crowd controller because that's what her ability did, and all of her 3 trees kind of were variations of that singular role. This one, the Vault Hunters kind of feel like they can more easily fill distinctive roles.
Right. I feel like they were starting to get to that. Like, you had stuff like Gage, the DLC character from 2, who, like, her skill trees actually almost made her play, like, completely differently.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the big takeaway, is that Borderlands 3 isn't necessarily, like, reinventing Borderlands, but it feels like they are improving and making good on a lot of, like, potential promises that, like, Borderlands 2 had. Where
Yes.
It's like, okay, like, you're improving, like, mobility, and just, like, the feel of combat feels, like, tighter and better. You're making the environments, like, more varied, and you're improving on the skill trees. You know, it's hard to say whether, if you didn't like Borderlands before, if this is gonna change it for you.
I don't think it will.
I don't think it will.
I think this is just more Borderlands.
It's more Borderlands, but I think the changes they are making to Borderlands is really smart, and it feels good, which is sort of, back when I saw the original trailer, I was worried that it just looks more Borderlands, that it wasn't going to be that much different. But I think the changes they're making are really smart, and having had a chance to actually play it, it feels good.
Yeah, I will freely admit I was wrong, because I was also on that video, and I said, looks like it's pretty much the same, and I don't know how I feel about that. And even though there are parts of it that are very similar, they have changed enough that I am 100% back on board.
Absolutely. Freely to admit we were wrong about that. So thank you for watching our hands-on impressions of Borderlands. If you want to see more Borderlands, I think we have like a ton of gameplay, and we did a live stream there. You have a bunch of impressions, I believe you did.
Yeah, and Steve and Kevin and Tam helped out by pushing out a bunch of awesome breakouts too.
Yes, so go check all of that stuff out, and we will be covering more of Borderlands as they announce more stuff, probably at E3. So see you guys then.
Bye-bye.